Aside from thoughts about running and getting away, Jimin's mind was devoid of any ideas as the light bounced about in tandem with her frantic steps. Screaming didn't even cross her mind, so overwhelming was her desire to escape. Not seeing a chair leg, Jimin's shin collided with the metal. The world spun as she tumbled onto the floor, her head bouncing off of the tiles, preventing her from reacting and regaining control. There was a clattering noise as the flashlight flew out of her hand and rolled on the ground. A table that was on its side helped slow her momentum, though her neck struck the edge of it with enough force to push the object. Her head rung as spots appeared in her vision. Laying on the ground, Jimin groaned and coughed when she tried to swallow the saliva in her mouth. The pain seemed to radiate throughout her body, making her pause as she tried not to cry out. "Come on, Jimin, get up," Jimin said through clenched teeth, forcing herself to not focus on her body hurting. Opening her hands and then clenching them, she made sure that her hands were okay. Wincing, Jimin looked down at her toes and saw them wriggling. Both of her feet were covered in blood from having to sprint in the dark. Seeing the state of her feet, the pain flooded her mind and she flinched. When she tried to bend her legs, pain blinded her and she began quickly breathing in and out to relieve some of the sensations. "What am I going to do now?" Panic bubbled up inside, thinking about the shadow of the figure and the sounds of the thing's voice. Was that Jason? Jimin wondered, thinking of what it said to her. "I don't understand what's happening," she whimpered. Using her hands, Jimin tried to get into a sitting position, resisting the sensation of nausea from a head injury. "That's a concussion," Jimin groaned, still seeing spots though the ringing was nearly gone. Her body felt like it had been beaten with how it hurt all over. Not wanting to focus on her present problems, the thought of the monster coming towards her took priority. "Hopefully, I gained enough distance away from that thing," Jimin prayed. In the condition she was in, it was doubtful that she'd be able to escape. Scooching over to the closest wall, Jimin tried to use it to keep her steady as she attempted to get back on her feet. Putting pressure on one of her hands, it slipped and caused her to bounce her head on the wall. Landing on her rear, she cursed while pressing a hand to her head. With the help of the flashlight that was far away from her, she could faintly make out a bloody handprint smeared across the wall. That's when she realized that her hands were all cut up due to the fall. "I must have cut them when I was rolling across this stupid floor." She lifted her hand to get a better view with the help of the light. Hissing sharply, she saw that it was bleeding pretty severely. As she tried to assess the damage to herself, the sounds of scurrying footsteps echoed throughout the hallway. Moving closer to the wall, while trying not to make too much noise, she nearly screamed when one of her legs jerked too quickly. Clamping her jaw shut, there was only a little whine of sound. Tears formed in her eyes from the pain, though she looked both ways to get a view of whatever was out there. A giggling sound was heard from both directions, followed by more clicking steps as if they were wearing high heels. Her heart sunk, hearing the noises coming from both directions. At this point, all she could hope for was whatever those things were, that they wouldn't see her. A part of her wished that she could have turned off the flashlight, which would only serve as a beacon. "They taste delicious," a childlike voice called out. "What tastes delicious?" Another voice responded. Instead of answering, it giggled, with more quick steps being heard somewhere in the dark. A wet slapping and gurgling noise joined the two. Shortly after, a shrill screaming noise was heard, followed by a crunch and of sucking noises. It wasn't something Jimin could identify as she heard the sounds. She didn't understand whether one of them had eaten the other or if this gurgling noise was from something new. A stench filled her nostrils, causing her to gag. Soon the smell became stronger, along with the sounds of sucking noises, followed by a series of pops and finished with a wet smack. Jimin cupped both of her ears, feeling the blood dribbling down the sides of her head as she tried to block the sounds of whatever was coming closer. Her mind felt like it did back in the cavern, being squeezed by the pressure. Not wanting to view the thing, she tightly closed her eyes as she whimpered. "I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die." She repeated out loud, knowing that escape was impossible. "Just get over with it!" she screamed and laughed. A feeling of a tentacle began to wrap around her leg, suction cups pulling at her flesh. But she didn't dare open her eyes and kept her ears closed, just hoping that it would be quick and not like what had happened to Jason. "This is an interesting moment. Should I come back?" A boy's voice pierced into her mind. Opening her eyes and letting go of her ears, she looked up, startled to see a mass of arms, tentacles, and clumps of flesh right next to her. Screaming, Jimin saw it had the head of Jason protruding out of the side of the mass of undulating and moist skin. "That's an interesting thing you came up with. Not sure why you decided to go with that and all of these creatures," the boy asked. "What?" Jimin barely registered what was said to her. The monster had ceased to move and looked to be at rest, the tentacle removing itself off of Jimin's leg. A clapping noise was made by the boy, and he said, "Oh, right. You can't see them with how dark it is." The boy snapped his finger, and the room was flooded with light. Shrieking, Jimin saw something between a spider and mosquito on the wall, though instead of just one of them, the entire hallway was covered. Only a small area where the flashlight's beam reached was devoid of the crawling eldritch things. Judging by the way they were distributed, the light from the flashlight was likely the only reason you didn't know about them. I don't know for how long they were following you, but they would have likely done something eventually. He looked behind him and then faced Jimin with a grin. "You really are a creative person, though I think you may have gotten help in creating this place in your mind." As Jimin looked at the boy, not knowing what was happening, a thought crossed her mind. "I know you," was all she could say as something clicked. Bowing to Jimin, the boy said, "It's an honor to be recognized." Listening to his words, Jimin felt like something was coming together. His voice sounded familiar, though she wasn't able to match it with a face. Flourishing his hand, the boy said, "Maybe this will jog your memory." Instantly, he was in a similar suit that she had been wearing inside of that cavern. A flash of recognition struck her as she pointed at him. "You were with Jade and the others." Snapping his fingers again, he now appeared to look like an older version of himself, slightly older than she was. "The name is Han, and yes, I was in the party that battled the modified humans." Her mouth was open in disbelief, no longer worried about the monsters around her. Looking at the floor, he tisked, "I'm getting a little annoyed by how messy this place is." Glancing at her, he tilted his head and asked, "I hope you don't mind me doing some cleaning." Not waiting to hear a response, he waved a hand. All the broken tiles, damaged flooring, shattered glass, and office furniture vanished and was replaced with something looking new. A feeling of relief quickly passed through her mind as if she was unburdened of stress. Her thoughts no longer felt like they were underwater, and she could think clearer. Someone I admired would tell me that a healthy mind starts with a clean environment. The boy, now man, named Han, explained as he smiled at the current surroundings. I would change the surroundings into something a bit more interesting, but I'm not sure if you'll be able to handle it at the moment. He looked curiously at Jimin. Who? What? Even though her mind was clear, she still couldn't process what was transpiring. Putting a hand to his chin, he appeared to be thinking of an appropriate response. Smiling, he lifted both hands to either side of him, like he was about to reveal something grand. Jimin felt like she was watching a performance.